All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Ovens Garage. We are here again today working on my wife's BMW. It's a 2003 X5. It has the 3-liter M54 engine and it has a leak, surprisingly. This is not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is power steering components. So the power steering reservoir, I noticed, had a leak coming from the bottom of it on one of the hoses. It was this hose in particular that went from the reservoir down to the pump. And then while we're down there, I had the bottom inspection plate off as well as the bottom cover. There's another set of power steering hoses that I noticed were very damp and potentially leaking, so I'm going to replace those. Here's the respective part numbers. I got them off of Parts Avatar. And I'm going to be replacing those parts today. So I have a lot of the engine ripped apart, but the power steering reservoir sits here. The hose runs down to the power steering pump, which here is loose, but runs to that. Okay, and then under here, this I'm replacing these power steering hoses. You can see they're quite damp, so I think they're leaking. But anyways, I have the replacement for that, and it runs between the power steering pump and there's a block back up there where the other end of the hose goes. This is the other end of the line. So I'm going to replace that line as well. Okay, so in the bag we have the hose itself, and then we got 2 washers, an O-ring, a bracket, and then this plug. So I'm assuming that there's a banjo bolt we got 2 washers for, and then this O-ring is for the end of this line. And then it looks like we have a new bracket where it clips in on the far side. So I'll go ahead and rip the old one off. All right, so I pulled the power steering pump off there. This is a 17 millimeter, and then the factory clamp that was crimped on there. Just used some side cutters to cut off the factory clamp. Got her out of there. So you can see here, that's where the O-ring goes on the one side of that power steering hose. Right, so there's one nut there you can see on that side that holds this kind of assembly of the 2 power steering hoses up. So I'll take that off, and then I'll also disconnect it from the top side here, where it's connected to that block up on this side. So it's probably also a 17. Okay, so just looking at the old hose and the new hose. The old hose has a built-in clamp. The new one comes with this new one that you got to throw on here, and we have to reuse that nut that came off of the old one for the mounting bracket. Otherwise we'll go ahead and throw the new one on. Okay, so I tightened that bolt, the banjo bolt down there. It's a 19 millimeter. Don't have to go too tight on banjo bolts, otherwise you risk the chance of breaking a banjo bolt because they're hollow on the inside. So I just snug that down with a 19 mil wrench. Make sure there's no leaks. All right, I've got the oil filter housing torqued down to spec. Next thing I'm going to do is put on the power steering pump down there, and then I'm going to be able to throw the alternator back on and hook everything up and put the belt back on and also put the fan back in. One step at a time. All right, I got the power steering pump mounted back on the bottom of the oil filter housing gasket. I'm going to come from the bottom side and tighten up the power steering hose that connects to the bottom of it. Make sure that's snug. All right, I got the bottom of this power steering hose snugged up to the pump, as you can see just up here. And I made sure that banjo bolt on the other side is snugged up. And here you can see the bracket on this side is fully installed. So that's pretty much the bottom power steering hose. The only one I have to run now is from the back here. You see where that 90 comes out of the bottom of the pump. You can sort of see it right there. That hose needs to go from that up to the power steering reservoir. I can throw the fan back on, and then some of the shrouds here, and then I'll put the upper rad hose back on, and then the upper power steering reservoir. Okay, so I've got the power steering reservoir mounted with the clamps on the bottom. This is how the hoses out of the bottom are positioned and how I decided to align the reservoir. And then on the bottom side, you can see the hose coming down just right there.
and I had a hose clamp on there as well, tightened up. So at this point, I'll be able to fill up the reservoir and bleed the system with the wheels off the ground. So what I'm gonna do is turn the car on. Once I get the rest of the engine back together, I'm gonna turn the car on, and then with the wheels off the ground like this, top up the reservoir, and then turn the wheels back and forth a bunch of times until the air is all blended out of the system. But there we go. Just as easy as that to change those leaky hoses and reservoir.